Virgo, you already know something is off. You have known it for a while, actually, maybe longer than you are comfortable admitting out loud. There is a pattern you keep finding yourself inside, and even as you are living it, even as you are in the middle of feeling everything that comes with it, some quiet, analytical part of you is standing slightly to the side, watching the whole thing unfold and thinking, here we go again. That part of you is exhausted. Not by the people, not really, but by the gap between what you know you deserve and what you keep choosing to walk toward anyway. I want to talk about that gap today, Virgo. Not to shame you for it, because there is nothing shameful about it, but because the cards pulled for you today are specific and they are honest and they are pointing toward something you need to hear clearly rather than softly. Let me describe what I felt the moment this energy opened, because the very first impression matters. I felt a quality of yearning immediately, the specific ache of someone who is deeply capable of love and who wants badly to place that love somewhere it will be held carefully. I also felt a quality of reaching the energetic posture of someone who has been extending themselves outward toward connections that keep asking for more than they give back. Connections that feel almost complete but carry something slightly hollow at their center that no amount of effort on your part can fill. That hollowness is the thing I want to examine today, because you keep arriving at it from different directions, with different people, wearing different faces, and somewhere underneath all of it is a pattern that belongs to you rather than to them. The first card in this reading shows a figure seated beneath a tree, arms folded, eyes closed, while three golden vessels sit before them, and a fourth is offered by an unseen hand descending from a cloud overhead. This is the energy of someone so absorbed in the cups they already have, in the familiar landscape of their own emotional habits, that they cannot see what is genuinely new being offered just beside them. I am sensing this is one of the core dynamics at play in your romantic patterns right now, Virgo. You are not unaware of love. You are deeply aware of it. But I am sensing you have been so oriented toward a particular kind of love, one that feels familiar in its texture and its temperature, that you have been unconsciously drawn back toward the same emotional architecture again and again, even when the person wearing it is someone entirely new. I want to expand on this because I think the specificity matters enormously here. The suit governing this reading is the suit of water, of emotion, of the deep interior life. And the number attached to this card sits in the middle of its suit, past the early excitement and before the later crisis, in that particular window where habits have solidified but where genuine boredom and dissatisfaction have not yet forced a reckoning. This tells me your patterns around love are not brand new or freshly forming. They are established, they have roots, and established patterns carry weight that requires real conscious effort to examine rather than simply continuing to live inside them. I want to go further with this because I think one of the most honest and important things I can say in this reading is that the wrong people you keep falling for are not random. They are not a string of bad luck or poor timing. There is a quality they share, and that quality is not a coincidence but a compass, pointing consistently toward a particular kind of emotional experience that part of you, the part that operates below conscious decision making, keeps seeking out. I am also sensing something about the specific texture of your initial attraction to these people. There is often an element of a project to it, someone who needs something from you, someone whose rough edges or emotional unavailability quietly activates your natural impulse to analyze, to improve, to be useful. Virgo energy is profoundly service oriented at its core, genuinely generous, genuinely attentive, and this is one of your most beautiful qualities. But I am sensing that this quality has been turned without your full awareness into a kind of romantic strategy, one where you unconsciously seek out people who need your particular brand of devotion rather than people who are simply ready to meet you as an equal. I want to ask you something directly, Virgo. When you reflect on the last two or three significant people you have found yourself drawn toward, what quality do they share? Not physically, not logistically, but emotionally. What does the texture of how they made you feel actually have in common? Because I am sensing the answer to that question is more revealing than you have allowed yourself to sit with fully. The second card I want to speak to shows a figure standing at a crossroads holding a single staff with 8 more planted upright in the ground around them in a formation that makes movement difficult in any direction. This is someone who arrived at a crossroads but stayed there, who built structures around the original wound rather than moving through it. I am sensing there is something specific in your emotional history that did not get fully processed, a connection or an experience that left a particular residue. And rather than that residue being cleared, it became a kind of template. Your nervous system learned from it, your heart learned from it. And what it learned was that this particular quality, this specific kind of tension or withholding or almost, but not quite, is what love feels like, is what love is supposed to feel like. I want to be careful here because I am not suggesting you are consciously seeking painful connections. I am not suggesting you enjoy difficulty for its own sake. What I am suggesting is that familiarity and comfort can become entangled in ways we cannot always see clearly from the inside. The connections that feel most immediately electric, most immediately alive, are often the ones that most closely mirror something unresolved from earlier in our history. And for you, Virgo, I am sensing that mirror has been particularly powerful and particularly persistent. I also want to name something about what happens to you specifically during the early phase of these connections, because I think this is where the pattern is most visible. At the beginning, when the dynamic is still uncertain, when this person has not yet fully shown you who they are, you are at your most engaged. Your analytical mind is activated. You are reading signals, noticing details, constructing a picture of who this person might be and what this connection might become. That state of active curiosity and interpretation actually feels good to a Virgo nervous system. It feels like purpose. And then as the pattern begins to reveal itself, as the unavailability or inconsistency or emotional withholding becomes undeniable, there is a shift into something more like a rescue mission, a quiet determination to understand this person deeply enough, to love them carefully enough, to somehow bridge the gap between who they are and who you need them to be. I want you to notice how much energy that has cost you over time. Not just in specific relationships, but cumulatively across every connection where you have been more invested in the project of understanding someone than in the simpler question of whether they were genuinely showing up for you. Let me pause here because I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want you to sit with it rather than answer quickly. When you meet someone who is genuinely available, genuinely consistent, genuinely interested in giving rather than primarily taking, does it feel exciting or does it feel slightly flat, slightly underwhelming? slightly like something is missing even though nothing is obviously wrong. If your honest answer is that available feels underwhelming, that is the pattern. That is not a character flaw. That is a nervous system that has been trained to read unavailability as intensity and intensity as love. Let me know in the comments if that resonates, because I suspect for many of you watching this, it does. The third card shows a scene of devastation on the surface. 10 swords planted in a figure, lying face down on the ground, a dark sky overhead. But on the horizon, there is a thin line of gold light beginning to break. This is the card of a genuine ending, a point where something truly cannot continue as it was. But it is also, critically, a card that contains its own dawn already. I want to speak to this card carefully because it is not delivering a message of doom. It is delivering a message of finality in service of something better. I am sensing that for many of you watching this reading today, there is a connection or perhaps a pattern of connection that has genuinely run its course, that has taken you as far as it can take you, and is now delivering diminishing returns at significant emotional cost. The number here sits at the completion point of its suit, the end of a full cycle, and the sword suit governs the mind, thought, decisions, and the painful clarity that comes when we are finally honest with ourselves about something we have been resisting. I am sensing the clarity being asked of you here is not comfortable. It is the kind that requires admitting something you have perhaps been avoiding, specifically that the pattern you keep choosing is costing you something real, something you cannot keep affording to spend. Inhale with me for a moment, Virgo, because I want to move now into what is underneath all of this, the deeper current that is actually driving these choices. Because the surface explanation of wrong people is never really the full story. The fourth card in this reading shows a figure in deep, voluntary stillness. This is someone who has chosen rest, chosen withdrawal, chosen the interior landscape over any external motion. When this energy appears in a reading about romantic patterns, it tells me something important. There is a part of you, a significant part, that is genuinely comfortable operating alone, that is genuinely self-sufficient, and that experiences intimacy not as relief, but as something that requires careful management. I want to name this clearly because I think it is deeply relevant to the pattern we are examining. When someone is fundamentally self-contained and self-sufficient, which is absolutely a Virgo quality and not inherently a problem, they often find themselves most comfortable in connections where full intimacy is never quite achieved, where there is always some distance maintained, some unavailability on the other person's part, some reason why complete vulnerability is not yet required. I am sensing that some of the wrong people you have found yourself drawn to were on some level safe because they were unavailable. Not safe in the way that protects you, but safe in the way that protects your interior world from being fully seen. Full availability, full reciprocity, full emotional exposure, that is the genuinely terrifying thing, not the wrong people. The wrong people are, in a strange way, a buffer against it. I want to speak now to what I see in terms of what you are genuinely searching for beneath all of this, because the cards also contain something beyond the pattern itself. The fifth position in this reading shows a card of pure, uncomplicated abundance and completeness. This is a card associated with the wish fulfilled, the emotional state of someone who has everything they actually wanted and is genuinely, quietly content in it. 9 cups arranged in a crescent above a seated figure, arms folded, satisfied. This is not an empty or provisional happiness. This is the real thing. I want you to understand what this tells me about you. You are not actually drawn to pain. You are not wired for suffering. The presence of this card in your reading tells me your genuine vision for love is actually quite simple and quite beautiful. Warmth, presence, sufficiency, someone who stays. That is what you want. That is what you have always wanted. The complexity is not in the wanting. The complexity is in believing it is available to you and in recognizing it when it arrives, wearing the face of something quieter and less electrically charged than what you have trained yourself to expect love to feel like. I want to address something practical now, because I think you deserve guidance that goes beyond simply naming the pattern. What would actually shift this, Virgo? What does the path out of this cycle genuinely look like? I am sensing several things clearly. First, the connection that will genuinely serve you is going to arrive with a quality of ease that initially reads as lack of excitement. I want you to be prepared for this. When someone shows up with no game playing, no mystery, no hot and cold dynamic, no anxious chase, your initial reaction may be a quiet, internal sense that something is missing. That feeling is the pattern talking, not your actual intuition. Learning to distinguish between the two is the real work of this season for you. I want to expand on this first point because I think it is the most practically important thing in this entire reading. The sensation of ease can register in your nervous system as flatness when you have been trained to equate love with effort and uncertainty. So when something genuinely good arrives, something genuinely reciprocal and genuinely available, it may not produce the familiar heart-racing, mind-occupying quality you have come to associate with romantic feeling. And because it does not produce that feeling, part of you may conclude that it is not love at all, that this person is simply not right for you, that the chemistry is insufficient. I want you to hold real skepticism about that conclusion when it arises, because that conclusion has likely cost you something real before what you have been calling chemistry may in fact be the nervous system recognition of a familiar wound, and what you have been calling flatness may actually be peace, which you have not yet learned to recognize as romantic. Second, I am sensing there is a specific conversation you need to have with yourself about what you are actually afraid of in genuine reciprocity. Not what you tell yourself you are afraid of, but what is underneath that. Because I am picking up something underneath your romantic patterns that connects to a deeper question about whether you fundamentally believe that someone who truly sees you, all of you, including the critical, exacting, difficult to please parts of a Virgo nature, would still choose to stay. And I am sensing that belief has been operating in the background of your choices without your full conscious awareness of it. Third, and I want to say this with genuine care because I mean it as support rather than criticism, some of the wrong people you have chosen were chosen because they gave you a legitimate reason to remain guarded. Their unavailability justified your own. Their inconsistency gave you something concrete to point to rather than having to examine the interior walls you have built around the parts of yourself you are not yet fully ready to offer to another person. I want to speak to what the next chapter actually looks like, because this reading is not designed to leave you simply holding a diagnosis without any sense of direction. The card that closed this reading depicts a figure in the middle of movement, leaving something behind, walking away from a landscape that no longer serves them without looking back at it. The cups they are leaving represent emotional investments that have run their course. The act of walking away is not desperate or reactive. It is deliberate, purposeful, and oriented towards something ahead rather than away from something behind. I am sensing this describes where you genuinely are, Virgo, even if it does not yet feel fully conscious. Something in you already knows the current pattern needs to change. Something in you is already in the process of turning away from the familiar emotional architecture, even if the steps are quiet and gradual rather than dramatic. The card suggests this movement is already underway. The reading today is, in some ways, simply making conscious what your deeper self has already begun. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with the full picture spirit assembled today. You are falling for the wrong people, not because you are broken and not because you have bad judgment, but because your nervous system learned a particular emotional signature early on and has been reaching for that signature in the bodies of new people ever since. The wrong people feel right in the beginning because they feel familiar. And the right person, when they come, may initially feel almost too quiet, too steady, too available to register as the love you have been seeking. The invitation this reading is extending is not to fix yourself. It is to get curious about the gap between what feels exciting and what would actually sustain you. To sit with that gap long enough that you can see its shape clearly, and to begin, slowly and without pressure, leaning your attention toward the latter rather than forever being pulled by the former. You are more than capable of this, Virgo. The analytical depth that makes you extraordinary also makes you uniquely equipped to examine your own patterns with real honesty once you decide to turn that gaze inward. And I am sensing you are closer to that decision than you may realize. The reason I say that with confidence is what the final position of this reading actually revealed. There is already movement happening in you, already a turning away from the familiar architecture, already a quiet internal reckoning that has been building beneath the surface of your daily life without necessarily announcing itself in dramatic terms. You may not have named it yet. You may not have fully acknowledged to yourself that something has shifted, but I believe this reading is landing for you today precisely because some part of you was ready for it too, because that part has already begun its work and needed the rest of you to catch up with what it has already quietly decided. If this reading resonated with you today, please share it with a Virgo who might be standing inside this same pattern without yet having the language for it. And leave me a comment below. I want to hear what came up for you as you listened. I read every single comment and I carry your stories with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, the right love will not feel like chasing. It will feel like finally being allowed to stop